Hey guys, before this video starts, I just want to let you guys know this is a re-upload, so some of you may have seen this. The reason why this video was re-uploaded is because I actually had it as unlisted and unfortunately accidentally put the link up too early so people that had a link to the video could watch it when it was only supposed to be patrons. And so it actually was already receiving traffic by the time that I published the video. It had received so much traffic that the YouTube algorithm didn't put it in like 90% of your guys' sub boxes. I really hope you enjoy this video. I think it's a lot of fun. And if you guys did watch the original video already, even if you don't want to watch it all the way through again, I'd really appreciate those of you who liked the video to throw another like on it. It actually had my best like ratio to views ever. This video only had 10,000 views and it already had 1.7K likes. So you guys were killing it with that. I really appreciate it. But I just wanted to explain, if you're seeing this video for the second time, that is why. So enjoy. Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's Pyromancer here and welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all having a wonderful day, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world. And today we're going to be talking about the first ones. Now, if you guys are not familiar with some of the things that have come out of Shadowlands thus far, there have been a couple different references to something or some ones referred to as the first ones. Now, this is left pretty ambiguous from what I'm able to tell, and I don't have beta. I can't imagine why that would be. So I can't actually get in there and actually see this kind of stuff myself. So just be aware of that. I'm just going off of what I'm able to remember and what I'm able to see on like Wowhead and stuff like that. So there's a couple things that I want to first establish. In this video, there's going to be a lot of context given that kind of all feeds into the main point that I'm trying to make. So I would sincerely appreciate it if you guys stick around for the majority of the video because it's going to be tied all together. It might not make sense just initially. Before we get started, I want to give a special thank you to my patrons. I really appreciate you guys' support. Right now on my Patreon, we are doing our second monthly Q&A for the month of July. So for those who would like to participate in that, head over to patreon.com/pyromancer and go ahead and throw a pledge my way if it's something that interests you and you can take part in that. For those of you that are not patrons, I still sincerely appreciate you guys being here. And if you don't mind, I would really, really like it if you guys like the video. It is a great way to support me as a content creator, helps me beat the algorithm, which has kind of been kicking my ass lately. And it just makes me feel good to know that you guys are enjoying the content. So with that all being said, let's get into it. So the first thing that we need to know about the first ones is that they seem to be separate, at least from what I can tell, from the death pantheon that exists within the Shadowlands. Now that's including the Archon, the Primus, that's including the Winter Queen, Sire Denathrius, seemingly the Jailer, and potentially the Arbiter. Because as we learned, at least from what I've seen in the data mining, that the Jailer used to actually kind of be a part of that death pantheon, and they all banded together to banish him away into the Maw. And so the Jailer has kind of been locked into this this sort of underworld. It's really quite sort of like a Hades-esque kind of story that's being told here. And really, when you look at the Maw and you see things like a river of souls that's running through it, and you see references to like Stygian entities. Stygian is in reference to the river Styx, the river of souls that leads into the underworld. So there's a very Greek thing going on here, which is really exciting. I think very, very interesting. And just from the naming schemes in the Maw, you can tell that it's Greek. So with that being said, the Jailer seems to be, or have been anyway, part of that kind of pantheon. Now, it wouldn't surprise me then, considering what Oribos is, if the Arbiter was or still is as well. So I think that's important to acknowledge because it shows us that whatever the first ones are, right, that the Jailer references when you touch this this artifact thing, I believe it's within the Maw, he's surprised that it reacts to a mortal, which that's an interesting thing that we're gonna talk about that. But he refers to the first ones, I believe, separate from himself, and that to me kind of illustrates that it's not the death pantheon that we know about. Whatever's being referenced here is a separate thing, potentially higher entities, right? Maybe like the actual crafters of not just like the realms of the Shadowlands that we know about, right? Those who shaped those realms, like Sire Denathrius or like the Winter Queen, etc. Those are kind of extensions of those individuals. But I would assume that power was taken from somewhere else and they crafted those realms. But it seems like the first ones might actually be who like literally made the actual like realm dimension thing, the entirety of the afterlife, and thus may have been responsible for the initial creation of something like Ouroboros, for instance. So these seem to be higher entities, placed far and above that which we're seeing in the Shadowlands itself. Now, in an interview, Ian Hazzikostas called the Jailer Titan plus level of a boss, right? And I think that there's a natural progression of power of things that we're kind of fighting in the Warcraft universe that makes sense. So considering that we have fought Titans, it makes sense, or at least avatars of Titans, it makes sense that we move up from there, right? So this Titan plus thing that this Jailer is going to become by the time that we actually face off against him, because he's allegedly like the last boss of the expansion. We will see. I would assume that that's because he's taking in so much anima, right? Like we're feeding him potentially one of the most potent power sources that exists in all of the multiverse and like all of the cosmos, period. Like we're basically, Sylvanas really has just been fucking feeding this guy. So he's going to become very powerful. But even still, I still don't think that power is going to surpass that which is referencing the first ones. So people just ask me flat out, like, who do you think the first ones are? Well, while there is no definitive answer to that, of course, I have my ideas. I think of about 3 individuals who I think could be first ones, right? Before I say who I think that might be, I have to throw something out there. There is a lot of important context in regards to some of the Titans that has to kind of be identified here. Okay. First things first, if you are new to my videos, you will probably not know this, and it will probably not make sense to you initially. But I believe that Azeroth is quite literally creation, like the source of everything. Not a shaper, not a forger, not a crafter, but like literally the source of the universe, like where everything comes from. And there's some different things that suggest this. The first one is the name Azeroth. It's inspired from an H.P. Lovecraft entity known as Azathoth, which is essentially this sleeping god who dreams the universe into existence. And if Azathoth wakes up, the universe ceases to exist. It's quite literally the source of how everything is, right? Like it's where everything comes from. All the other gods and everything like that comes from this specific individual. So that's a huge inspiration in and of itself. The next one is if you look right at the cosmology map, you can actually see that in the cosmology chart, Azeroth is quite literally in the center. Like as if Azeroth is the center of the universe, right? So that's a little bit more of a loose connection, but everything sort of revolves around her. The next thing is that in Before the Storm, which was a book that came out with Battle for Azeroth, Christy Golden writes something quite peculiar. And I had an interview with Madeline Rue, who wrote the newest book, Shadows Rising. I got a couple copies sitting back there. And she basically told me flat out, yeah, there's points in the book where Blizzard very meticulously and specifically tells me what to write. Like, we go over it together and make sure that it's written word for word exactly how Blizzard wants it. There's a couple passages in there, one from Bwan Samdi about the cycle of life and death, which is a great example of this. And it's meant to be pretty obvious when what you're being told is, like, very important and you really need to you need to pay attention to what's being said. Madeline said that herself, that there are points where, you know, it's meant to be pretty obvious when it's a dire piece of information. But in Before the Storm, there's a point, and I believe this is another one of those instances with Christy Golden, where Sylvanas holds Azerite for the first time. And to make a long quote short, it essentially says that when she held Azerite, she felt like a goddess of creation and destruction. And you're literally holding, she's holding the blood essence of what our world is. what our world represents, right? I believe that Azerite is not just the blood of Azeroth, but there's something else mixed in there. I think that provides the destruction aspect. I believe that that is the blood of Argus that got into our planet primarily because of the sword infused with his power that Sargeras stuck in our planet. So there's definitely some different hints that kind of lead me to believe that Azeroth is creation. The only other thing that I think is really noteworthy is that in Chronicle, the Titans tell Sargeras, and assuming that this is correct and that it's truthful and whatnot, they tell Sargeras that Azeroth is the most powerful Titan that they've ever come across. The most powerful entity that they've ever encountered is Azeroth. She exists inside our planet. But what makes Azeroth more powerful than all of them? I would have to wonder, like, what quite literally could exist as a literal, like, nuclear power plant, like a source of power for the cosmos? Creation itself. And most likely represented by the force of light. True light in creation. Also, there's a quote from the Eye of the Corruptor, I believe, in Nazjatar, which is like an extension of N'Zoth, essentially. It's an NPC that you can fight. I believe it has the quote, I think it comes from this ad, "She is not the last, but the first. Drown her and you will see." I think that's talking about Azeroth, because Azeroth is often referred to as the final Titan, right? Save the final Titan. We must rebuild the final Titan. But I kind of think that she's not. I think she's the first. She's not the last, but the first. And I think that Azeroth has been around a fucking shitload longer than anybody realizes. On that note, let's talk about Elune. The legend of Anshin Musha, that the Earth Mother basically ripped out her own eyes. They go into the sky as the sun and the moon. So would that mean that Elune is Musha, and that the Anshi is a separate thing or entity or whatever? Because if it does, we just learned something very interesting from data mining, once again, in Shadowlands. We learned that Elune is not unique and specific to Azeroth. But that's interesting. And we're going to talk more about that in a different video, but the main point that I want to make is that if Elune had existed on another planet, because there are apparently other entities on some other planet that used her power to fight against old gods, it sounds like, then that means Elune is a traveler and has moved around and gone to other planets. But it would seem to me that given that there's a pillar of creation related to Elune, that Elune has a strong connection with the Titans. I don't think that's far-fetched at all. It seems pretty obvious that Elune has some type of connection with them. That could mean that the Titans actually have taken Elune around to different worlds and maybe used her power or used her as a tool to accomplish certain things. I mean, when you look at the moons on Draenor, they are quite literally exactly the same as the ones we have. You have one big one and you have one little one, like the white lady and the blue child. That is to say that if the legend is true, that Anshe and Musha being presumably Elune, came from Azeroth, then that means that they took the moon from Azeroth, or perhaps created it from the crust of Azeroth, to other worlds, which means that what we know about the timeline for when the Titans discovered Azeroth is not fucking true. Let's go back to Argus. If I had to take a shot in the dark about who one of the first ones was, considering the collector's edition, or the deluxe edition for Shadowlands has the Eternal Traveler set in a mount that looks exactly like the color scheme for Argus, Argus's scythe, all that shit. It even actually matches perfectly with the max rank cloak, the Shroud of Azra Kamas, or whatever how the fuck you say that, from 8.3. It all ties together. It all looks almost exactly the same. If I had to guess who one of the first ones was, I would definitely say it was Argus. But if I'm going to assert these other things about Azeroth and about Elune, I would guess that it's probably those two as well. If I had to pick three entities to be the first ones, Azeroth, Elune, Argus. In this order, Azeroth, the creator, the literal goddess of the universe, where everything comes from, and stemming from her, as she is, I would assert she is light. From her, Argus comes, the darkness, the destroyer, creation and destruction, inherently linked and inherently tied together. One of the things that Sylvanas recognizes when holding Azerite is that she'd never realized how deeply intertwined creation and destruction were. Argus and Azeroth, twin worlds essentially, in regards to how they interact with one another. I do think that it's possible that she's basically the mother of all, and Argus kind of stemmed from her. I think it's possible that Elune could quite frankly be kind of their child, or an offspring of them. I think at this point, to me, it seems like Elune is either one of two things. She's either quite literally an extension of Azeroth herself, potentially as an offspring, right? Or a component, a literal part of Azeroth separated from Azeroth. But either way, it means the same thing. It means that she stemmed from Azeroth itself. But Elune has that dark side as well, which I would assume, if there is this connection, this sort of familial structure that I'm proposing, that must have come from Argus if I had to take a shot in the dark and guess. But then people will say, well, Argus is a new Titan, Pyro. That's ridiculous. Come on, you played Legion, you should know this. But see, the thing is this, that before Legion, or actually it might have been during Legion actually, patch 7.3, I believe, there was an audio drama that came out that was free, and it still exists on the World of Warcraft website. You should really go listen to it. It's called 1000 Years of War, and it details the story of Ilaria and Turalyon after they go in on the Alliance expedition to Outland, and everything is severed. You know, the Dark Portal and everything is no longer accessible, and they're stuck there. Well, the Army of the Light finds them, reaches out to them, and they're sent by Zira, the Light Mother, on a task to go to Argus to figure out what's going on with the Legion and if there's any survivors with the Army of the Light. So they go there, and while there, Illyria is actually caught, kind of off guard, connecting with the soul that exists at the center of that world, which is Argus, right? Super powerful entity, right? And people will say, well, we beat Argus. Okay, fine. With the help of 6 other Titans. Yeah, sure, we did. And legendary weapons. Yeah, we were able to take him down and revert him back into a world soul form. Only because, after he quite literally swiped us in half with the Scythe of Death, that Aeonar revived us and kind of broke the laws of the universe, if you ask me. Life literally just triumphing over death and saying, nope. And basically like, yeah, you guys can come back. That's a big problem. We might revisit that. But it turns out that in this audio drama, it says when Illyria is experiencing this burst of memories that is sent to her by Argus, one of those memories includes this detail. It was energy spinning out into the cosmos. It found a sun that kept it warm and it fell asleep. Here's the thing about that. Everything that exists after that fact doesn't really matter as much as that instance. It means that Argus, as this energy, was apparently awake and sentient and aware, right? In the fight with Argus the Unmaker, Aman'Thul calls him Unmaker, and he says, time answers to me, Unmaker, the one force that can bind your relentless fury. That tells me a couple things. They have a fucking title for him, first of all, which illustrates to me that they know him. The Titans knew who Argus was. Not only that, Aman'Thul somehow knows that time is the only way to bind his fury. Almost as if Aman'Thul may have done that before. How could he know that? It's because this isn't the first time Argus has been awakened. It isn't the first time Argus has existed. The audio drama itself tells you that. He fell asleep, which means before he was awake. Not a new Titan, not something that Sargeras built randomly to fulfill his goals, something Sargeras may have sought out because he already knew of his existence. Here's the real kicker. In Chronicle, Argus is never mentioned once. Not in any of the Chronicle novels is he ever mentioned. And people will say, oh, it's because the writing, lazy writing, they didn't know about Argus, blah, blah, this, that. Fuck off with that. Hey, you're taking the piss right now when people say that kind of stuff. Come on, man. Give a little credit and just hear the idea. Here's the thing in Chronicle, you know what it also can't tell you? It can't tell you very much about the origins of the Shadowlands. And this is where it kind of ties together, because the jailer's very shocked about the fact that mortals, specifically mortals, interacting with a relic of the First Ones yields a result. Why? Why mortals? Why is it so interesting that that's what is stirring a response? Here's why. Because in Chronicle it tells you that no one knows when or who or how the Shadowlands was created in a specific manner. But it says that they came to existence when mortal life first arose in the cosmos. Mortality and death in the realms of death are inherently linked together. They must be, because mortals are the only ones that die and go into the Shadowlands. That's the whole purpose of the anima cycle and the mortal soul. Being mortal is what makes you able to die, right? Like mortal in the sense of my soul will pass on to the realm of the dead. I am flesh. I die. I go there. So is it possible, like let's say if it is possible that the Shadowlands came to be when mortal life first arose in the cosmos, maybe someone that is responsible for mortality, i.e. flesh, is also responsible for the creation of the Shadowlands in and of itself. Flesh is his gift. He is your true creator. And if flesh and mortality are inherently tied together, which they are, and that is inherently tied to death, then it doesn't seem a stretch to me to then say that death and flesh are inherently tied to one another. I don't think that seems pretty fair. But again, if the jailer's surprised about that, is that to suggest that the First Ones came before mortal life ever arose? And perhaps that's why the jailer is shocked that the relic of the First Ones actually responds to the interaction of a mortal. You see where I'm going with this? This might seem fragmented and random, but to tie it together, here's basically what I'm saying. Azeroth is creation. Argus came from her. Most likely is responsible for building and creating the Shadowlands, where mortality most likely comes from. As the Unmaker, it doesn't seem far-fetched to me. And considering a lot of his abilities are death-aligned, it doesn't seem far-fetched to me. Elune may be their child and has an inherent link to the Shadowlands, but understand this. I think that all the Titans are also the children of Azeroth. She's like Big Mama of the cosmos. Like, literally everything I think came from her. And I know what Chronicle says about light and void, and I don't believe it. Okay? I'll put it that way. I have videos explaining what I think the light and void is. I think you'd really enjoy them. And if you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button. Once again, I really appreciate that. Hit the bell, notifications, subscribe, all that good shit. But again, I think it's top down. Azeroth, Argus, Elune, Titans, right? The other gods. Like this is turning into like a very common structure for like familial god relationships in many mythos, right? We can look at the Norse, we can look at the Greeks, we can look at the Egyptians, we can look at a lot of different stuff here. And it's almost always a familial structure. So again, if I had to take a guess at who the First Ones were, my number one pick is Argus. For sure. For sure. My next pick is probably going to be Azeroth, and then Elune alongside them. And we're going to get a lot of interesting information here in Shadowlands. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be an exciting one. It's going to be a lot of cool stuff revealed to us, I think, and hopefully a lot about Elune. So that's my take on that. That's what I think the First Ones probably are. I don't have a better guess, realistically. Like that's my number one. That's my guess. So that's what I think. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Rant videos, it's fun stuff. 24 minutes of just straight fucking lore. I'll have links to all this stuff down in the description below. 1,000 Years of War and all that good stuff. So check them out. Guys, again, another special thank you to my patrons. You guys make this type of shit possible. I'll throw all your names up here on the video. My top patrons and then all the other patrons. You guys really are amazing. Thank you so much. And just keep in mind that Q&A closes in about 3 days. Yeah, on the 1st. I guess that would be, yeah, on the 1st. So get your questions in, guys. Go check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Pyromancer. You can get early access to videos, get access to the monthly Q&A, unique and specific videos that other people are never even going to get to see. And I think you guys might enjoy that. So follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/pyromancersarg. And finally, go follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/pyromancer. I sincerely appreciate you guys going over there, checking my stuff out when I do stream. Yeah, we just talk about lore mostly for the most part. So yeah, that's it, guys. It's good to be back. Appreciate you guys very much. Thank you so much for watching. Stay awesome. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.